Hello, I'm just making a video to go over some of the things that I found recently while exploring Winnipeg and looking into some of the esoteric architecture and the layout of Winnipeg's downtown region, the Forks, and the financial sector in general, and just kind of share what I've been discovering. So essentially there's a map of Babylon here at the peak of the Babylonian Empire. So we'll just get right into it. Just to go over what Babylon is. Babylon was a prominent city within Mesopotamia, the border geographical region known as the land between two rivers, the Tigris and Euphrates River. This will be important in the next few slides. This fertile area in modern-day southern Iraq was the site of many early civilizations due to rich soil deposited by the rivers, which supported agriculture and larger populations. So the location was here, if you can see my mouse, between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. Fertile soil, the cradle of civilization. Some archaeologists and historians consider this to be one of the first civilizations in the world. We can see the Babylonian Empire here in the 6th or 7th BC. When it peaked, it encompassed all of this region here in the Middle East, going all the way into the Levant and Judah, which is near the modern day what we call Israel and Palestine today, and then into Egypt, especially near the Nile River Delta. So we'll go on to the next slide here. So we have to talk about Winnipeg as a city and why it is important and why these discoveries have a real deeper meaning. Why would they be built in this particular spot in North America? So Winnipeg shipping port history involves the Red River, with docks established in the early 1900s by the Lake Winnipeg Shipping Company and later the Alexander Docks, which served local industries and grain transport to Lake Winnipeg. River traffic declined with an improving rail and road networks and the opening of the Panama Canal, leading to the closure of these docks in the 2010s. Winnipeg is now an inland port at the Centre Port Canada, focusing on rail, truck, air cargo operations rather than river shipping. So a little backstory here that's not covered in this little blurb here from Google. Originally, when Canada was first being developed, Winnipeg was going to be the most important trade hub inside of North America. It had railroad crossings going from going from east to west, would have a central point here in Winnipeg, which goes by the center point, which is now the largest inland port in North America. So we still are majorly important for international trade for both Canada and the United States. The Panama Canal concept actually threw off this whole thing. So Winnipeg was going to be this major city and the largest trade center inside of Canada and the United States, but the Panama Canal threw that off as a way of shipping. Instead of having to go across land through Canada, they were able to ship directly by barge through the Panama Canal to get across that region there in Panama, in Central and South America. So this shows here on the side here, other than that little blurb on the history of Winnipeg, we are actually the very center here of North America, and that's very interesting for several reasons. Some of them I didn't go into in depth in this video, but I plan on making others on these specific landmarks and specific ideas, but this is more of a generalized video to go over what I found with the map of Babylon and in relation to Winnipeg. So here, if we flip this map over that we looked at on slide 1, if we go back here, we can see this map here. we go to slide 3, we can see that if I flip this over, that we actually have a lot of similarities in how these makeups are laid out. And this is very important for one reason. In the first slide we discussed Mesopotamia, which was the land between two rivers. If we come back to here and we look at this region inside of Winnipeg, which is near the Forks, the Manitoba Legislative Building, and that general area of governmental and financial part of town, the Forks here is actually two rivers. That would make that this area here in St. Boniface is actually technically a Mesopotamia. It's a land between two rivers. So this is very important in understanding why the city is laid out the way it is and why they built specific buildings in specific parts of Winnipeg, because there's this miniature version of Babylon inside this region here, which is very important both for tourism and for trade with the CN rail station, for instance. So we'll just go into my little thing I wrote here. If we flip the map upside down from its peak of the 6th to 7th century BC, we can see many similarities between the Babylonian Empire and how the Forks Market and downtown financial and government region in Winnipeg closely aligned with the inverted map of the Babylonian Empire, with the plains of Shinar being slightly misplaced within the general area of the two rivers meeting at a point in Winnipeg. So we're going to go here now. We're going to break down the word Shindar, which actually in Hebrew is made of two letters, the sin and dar, and then the subword dar. In Hebrew, the letter sin is the 21st letter of the Hebrew alphabet, and represented by this character here. It's distinguished from this character shin by a dot on its left side, while shin has a dot on its right side. Sin is pronounced in English sin like sun, and shin is pronounced like shin sound as in ship. So Shindar is actually the same letter, but with the dot on either side determines which letter it is. This is very important because there is an Akkadian god named Shin, which is the equivalent of Nana, the Sumerian god, which was the god of the moon. This guy over here on the right. He was a major deity in the region's pantheon, associated with the moon, wisdom, and cattle herding. Shin was the father of the sun, god Shemesh, and the goddess Ishtar, and his symbol was the crescent moon. His main cult centers were the cities of Ur and Haran. So we can see over here, this is Shin, and there's crescent moons everywhere. We can go down here and we can look at the live long and prosper symbol, that what the Vulcan symbol from Star Trek that Spock would do is actually a Jewish mystic symbol that represents Shaddai, which is the Hebrew name for the Lord and the temple of the priests, and they would hold out their hands in this position during benediction when they would say Shaddai. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May he lift up his face to shine to you, light upon you, and be gracious to look. May he give you peace. Disclaimer, I am not religious. I am not Jewish or Christian or any of the other religions or spiritual schools discussed here. I'm strictly using information to try to figure out why the people that built it have built it in the way that they did. But we'll continue on here. The word dar in Hebrew refers to the pearl of the mother of pearl. That's a weird sentence. Appearing once in the Bible in Esther 1:6. It's also used as a unisex baby name, sometimes meaning mother of pearl or nugget of wisdom. The word itself comes from the root meaning pearl, a potential generation circling, connection with words dove and freedom. It also describes white in some translations. So basically what we're looking at here is white sun. Shindar. The plains of Shindar would be the plains of the white sun, or the plains of Shin, the moon god, the, the white sun being the moon. On to our next slide here. So the forks, we discussed previously that the forks was essentially the land between two rivers, but here's a little more information about the forks. It's a historic and vibrant meeting place in downtown Winnipeg, located at the junction of the Red and Assiniboia rivers. Designated a National Historic Site, the 56-acre area offers a blend of shops, restaurants, cultural attractions, and year-round recreational activities. It's been around for 6,000 years as a meeting place. Archaeological evidence shows that Aboriginal groups, including the the Assiniboine, Cree, and Ojibwe, not Anishinaabe, but then we will talk about that later, used this site as a meeting, fishing, and trading spot for thousands of years. In the fur trade era, starting in 1738, with the establishment of Fort Rouge, the area became a key hub for fur trade, with multiple trading posts and forts built over the decades. Railway and immigration. In the late 1800s, the Forks transformed into a railway hub and the gateway to the Canadian West for thousands of immigrants. Many of the site's current buildings, such as the Forks Market and the Johnson Terminal, are repurposed railway structures. So we talked again that originally in the late 1800s, when Canada was first starting up and when Winnipeg was a major trade center, they wanted to use it as the primary shipping port, inland port, for all of Canada and the United States' international shipping when it came to either the west coast or the east coast. So because of that, in this region, which a lot of the buildings have been transformed, a lot of them are new, like the ones we will discuss today, but a lot of those buildings, like the Forks Market, for instance, were actually part of this gigantic railroad complex that once existed in that same area. So back to the plain of Shinar, we can look here. If you see this building, this is actually the Museum of Human Rights at the Forks, and I am under the impression that this is supposed to be a replica of the Tower of Babel. And this is interesting. The plain of Shinar is a historic region in Mesopotamia corresponding to southern Iraq that was the site of the Tower of Babel in the biblical account of Genesis. Remember Genesis, that's an interesting word. We will learn why in the coming slides. Mentioned throughout the Old Testament, it's often identified with ancient Babylonia and the land of the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. Again, the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, like we mentioned before in Babylon. The area is significant for its association with early civilizations, the origin of the Tower of Babel, and as a location for the Jewish people when they were later exiled. So we can look on the side here. Here's the Canadian Museum of Human Rights, and here is the Tower of Babel as it's been displayed. Underneath here we have Mount Meru, which is a Hindu concept from India that also bears similarities to the Canadian Human Rights Museum. So I feel it's kind of a culmination of these ideas, but the plain of Shinar concept is interesting because where the plain of Shinar would be located in relation to the Tigris and Euphrates River is similar to the location where this building has been built off the shores of the Red and the Assiniboine River. So the Forks, as an entire geographic region, the 65-acre area, or the 56-acre area, sorry, can be looked at as essentially a miniature version of the plains of Shinar. So the Tower of Babel, if you don't know what that is, the plain is famously the location where descendants of Noah built the Tower of Babel, an event that led to the confusion of languages and the dispersal of people across the earth. We'll go back into this, I just want to read through this. Nimrod Kingdom. Shinar is also known as the beginning of Nimrod's kingdom and is home to the other cities like Erech, Akkad, and Calneh, according to Genesis. Abraham's time. King Amraphel of Shinar was one of the kings defeated by Abraham in Genesis, and then exile. In later times, Shinar was equated with Babylon, a land of which the Jewish exiles were sent. So we're going to go back here to this first one. Again, I don't believe in these stories necessarily. They're more mythological to me, but the concept of confusion of languages and dispersal of people across the earth is really interesting, because at the forks there is the Oadina, which is a celebration circle and an astronomical and astrological clock, which I haven't covered in here because I'm going to do its own video, because it's a very interesting place. I'll do a video on that on its own. But in that Odina, there is several different cultures represented with several different languages there. And so it's almost as if the Tower of Babel in the mythology was where the languages spread apart, then the Oadina is essentially where the languages are coming back together in a similar way. And I feel that this relationship to the Tower of Babel and to the Torah and the Bible is intentional, absolutely intentional. It's not just an accident that these things line up. They've done this on purpose. The architects of these places in Winnipeg. So we can go here. The Tower of Babel is an origin myth from the biblical book of Genesis. Again, we're talking about Genesis. That explains the existence of diverse human languages and cultures. The story describes a unified, single-language humanity attempting to build a tower to reach the heavens. God, seeing their ambition and potential, confuses their languages, preventing them from understanding each other and leading them to scatter across the earth and abandon their project. The story serves as a cautionary tale about human pride that limits ambition and introduces the concept of linguistic diversity. Also going down here, Mount Meru can refer to the mythological world mountain in Hindu, Jain, and Buddhist cosmology, or a real volcano mountain in Tanzania, the 8th highest in Africa at 4,562 and 13 meters, 0.13, whatever, this number. The mythological Mount Meru is the sacred center of the universe, where the Tanzanian mountain Mount Meru is a dormant stratovolcano located west of Kilimanjaro, popular for trekking and as a practice for Kilimanjaro's more challenging climbs. So, in a mythological sense, it's supposed to be the center of the universe, and this is important. We will see coming up on the next slide. But not just the center of the universe, but also where everything is supposed to be created. Now, I don't think there's any real truth to that. It's more of a mythological analogy. But again, we're looking at this from the context of trying to understand it esoterically, and why the people who created these buildings in these specific places did it. So we're going to go on to the next slide now. So here we're going to talk about the Manitou Api a little bit, and what exactly the Manitou Api is. So we'll talk about what the elder Dave Kershane says about the Manitou Api, and then we'll look into, on the side here, the more fleshed out definition. Rooted in the sacred story of the Red People is in our Genesis. Remember the word Genesis that we were just talking about in the Bible. We're building a new turtle lodge in one of our most sacred sites at the Manitou Api. This lodge will be the People's Lodge, intended to unite all peoples of the world to experience a spiritual connection that we as the first peoples have with the land, the common bond that ties us all together. We are the children of the Mother Earth, and she will be the one to correct and teach us. So again, we're looking at similarities here. Let's just go back to this last slide here about Mount Meru being the center of the universe, and we're also talking about the Tower of Babel being where linguistic diversity was created, where peoples were spread apart coming from that central point. And here in the Manitou Api, the Native American people here in Canada, they believe, at least the Cree and Ojibwe people as far as I understand it, that where we are now in Manitoba is supposed to be this region where people come together spiritually and share language and culture with each other. So we're going to go here. The story of Mantuapi is a Anishinaabe tradition about a sacred place where the creator sat, which is essential to the indigenous culture of Manitoba and serves as the gathering site for sharing knowledge, medicines, and ceremonies. The term also refers to the film and culture project by the Turtle Lodge, that's these guys, that explores forgotten wisdom and has been associated with annual gatherings like Igniting the Fire and the Vision Quest. The sacred site, Manituapi, or Api, which is funny to me as a programmer, API, but anyways, is an Anishinaabe term meaning where the creator sat. It is a significant indigenous sacred site in Manitoba, Canada, where people have gathered for generations to share knowledge, medicine, ceremonies, and procedures. So, essentially, the Native American people here, the Anishinaabe, which is more of a generalized term for several different tribes, Ojibwe, Cree, Oji Cree, they have this belief that where we're at in Manitoba is the seat of the creator, the seat of the god of all, let's say, which is really interesting because if we look at the plane of Shindar and Shin, in Akkadian mythology, Shin was the father of other gods, Shamash and Ishtar, and Shin Shaddai was considered the Lord in Hebrew. So coming back here, we're talking about a place where it's very sacred because they believe that this is where the creator comes from. The creator, the god, Shin Shaddai, Shin, these are all similar entities to one another. Again, the reason why they built these buildings in this specific place, I believe, is 100% intentional, and these are some of the reasons why. Let's continue on. So we're going to talk a little bit about Memphis as a city of Egypt, not necessarily Memphis, Tennessee, which is named after this city in Egypt, but we will go here. Memphis, which is modern-day Rahina, was the ancient capital of Egypt, founded around 3100 BC, which is ancient if you think about it, that's a long time ago, by Pharaoh Menes, and served as a vital administrative, religious, and cultural center for over 3,000 years, particularly during the Old Kingdom. Its ruins are located near Giza and are part of the UNESCO World Heritage Site that includes the Pyramids of Giza, Saqqara, and Dashur, offering visitors a tangible connection to this pivotal area of Egyptian history. Founding. Tradition attributes its founding to Pharaoh Menes, also known as Narmer, who unified Upper and Lower Egypt and established the capital of Memphis around 3100. As a capital city, it served as the effective administrative capital for most of the pharaonic period, linking the north and south of the country through its strategic location. It's a religious center. Memphis was a significant religious hub, with Ptah, the god of craftsmen and architects, as the principal deity, and his temple, Hutkaptah, giving rise to the Greek name Egypt. Decline and abandonment. Memphis' importance waned with the rise of Thebes and later Alexandria, and it was largely abandoned by 641 AD, when its remains used as a quarry for new cities. Now this is very interesting here, specifically because if we look at Memphis here on the map, and here's one of the first step pyramids that they created, as well as this alabaster sphinx. These are all from Memphis, again, we're talking 5,000 something years ago. So it's incredible that these things have survived. We can come back to our first map here, and we can see that in the Babylonian Empire at its peak, they actually had control of this region for a bit here, and Memphis was in this region. If we come back to the other slide, Memphis is in this region around what is now today Cairo in the river delta. So we'll talk about the Sphinx here, the Memphis Sphinx, because it is very important, and we'll see on the next slide why. The Memphis Sphinx, also known as the Alabaster Sphinx, is a large alabaster structure, or sculpture, located at the Memphis Museum in Mitrahina. I'm having a hard time saying this. Mitrahina, Egypt, during the ancient capital of Memphis. It's a 26-foot long, 13-foot tall sphinx carved during the 18th dynasty. Though the pharaoh it honors, likely Hatshepsut or Amenhotep II, is unknown, the sphinx once adorned the temple complex of the chief god of Memphis, Ptah. It remains a significant testament to the ancient Egyptian artistry and devotion. Now, why is this sphinx so important? Well, we'll come to the next slide here, and you'll see immediately why the sphinx is so important here. The Manitoba Legislative Building has esoteric elements woven into its architecture, a concept popularized by graduate Frank Albo and explored on the Hermetic Code Tour, which details the building's symbols, Freemasonry, Hermeticism, and ancient temple designs. These elements include Egyptian sphinxes, like the one that he's leaning up against here. This guy, by the way, is a Freemason. The Pool of the Black Star, references to the Ark of the Covenant, numerological codes like the Fibonacci sequence, and the alchemical symbolism of the Golden Boy. So I know a little bit about this because I've studied it extensively myself, but this is just one slide here. This is the last slide of my presentation for today, but I will be making individual videos like this going through each one of these places, because alone they are very interesting and important, but as a set I just wanted to show off what I've been researching for the last few years, that I kind of lost my train of thought on it for a while, but got back to it recently with the map of Babylon and how I think that it's all relative to Babylon, Winnipeg being Babylon, or having recreations therein. So, let's look at some of these things here. The Egyptian sphinxes. Two large sphinxes at the north entrance bear hieroglyphic inscriptions on their chests that are only visible from the roof. So the only way you can see these guys is, the only way you can read the inscriptions, which I think this is Capri, with the carrying the sun raft above him. This is only visible from the roof, and the only guys that have access to the roof are people like this guy, Frank Albo, who wrote the Hermetic Code, a book about this very topic. There's also the Pool of the Black Star, which I don't have a representation here, but a circular chamber beneath the main dome features a black marble 8-pointed star, which is said to represent a fertility goddess and have acoustic properties that amplify the voices of those speaking at its center. Now, I'll tell you right now that the Pool of the Black Star is definitely more nefarious than the way they make it sound here. From my own research, the Pool of the Black Star has some pretty negative connotations. It seems to be designed in the exact shape of a ritualistic sacrifice chamber, and I have found some sources to back that up from Freemasonic literature in this region, because Winnipeg has a very long and illustrious Freemasonic history, which I will go into in a different video. But for now, let's just leave it at, there is a lot I want to talk about with the Pool of the Black Star in particular, as well as some of these other concepts that I don't want to pack into this video because we're already half an hour long. So the Ark of the Covenant, that's this here. They have a sculpture above the Lieutenant Governor's office, which is off limits to the public. Apparently this is a real chest that you can open, but this chest apparently shows, or is apparently a representation of the Ark of the Covenant. And on the two sides we have what appears to be a Roman warrior and what appears to be a indigenous warrior, maybe a Mohawk warrior or something like that. And then we have this chest here, which is a war chest. It's supposed to be Queen Victoria's war chest, is what I've been told. Or maybe Queen Elizabeth's war chest, I can't remember. One of the queens from England. And inside of here is apparently there's got to be something in there, but nobody knows what exactly is in there. But we'll continue on to the Golden Boy. So the iconic statue on top of the dome is the Greek god Hermes. Also, Hermes is apparently another Hermes symbolizes commerce and representing the alchemical fifth essence within a framework of the four elements. So, okay, I kind of got sidetracked here because this is very interesting, but the Golden Boy represents Hermes or Mercury, who is the god in Roman and Greco-Roman, either Greek or Roman mythology, of enterprise and of delivering information, of high speed. He was the messenger god between, so of messages, it would be a better way of saying that. But in both mythologies, they are able to run very fast. From an alchemical standpoint, though, it represents the alchemical quest to find the Philosopher's Stone and to be able to turn anything into gold. So alongside the Greek god Hermes here, which we know as the Golden Boy, there's also gargoyles on the four cardinal directions, which represent earth, air, fire, and water. And then on top of that, you have Hermes, who is carrying a torch, which is similar to the Olympic torch, and wheat, which represents agriculture. And then lastly, inside of this building, there's numerical codes. The building incorporates numerological principles, including the golden ratio, the Fibonacci sequence, and references to numbers like 666 and 13, which is also very interesting. So I'll make another video about more in depth these concepts from the legislative building, as well as a separate video about this here, the Human Rights Museum. I also want to make a video about the Oladina, and maybe something about the early Freemasonic history of Winnipeg and why all these things make sense in the context of it being a Freemasonic hotspot in North America. So that's all I have here today. This is my little research project I've been working on for a while, and I kind of compiled it over the last few days. I want to make more videos like this. I'm not necessarily sure when I will do it because I'm very busy right now, but if people watch this video and they find it interesting, I will make more content along the same lines. So that's enough for me for today. I will make more videos in the future. Thank you if you watch this. I appreciate it.